Hello everyone. The date is January 10th, 2014. This is show number 10 for the Scannell agenda. Thank you very much for watching. I really don't know what I'm doing today here at all. I'm just going to bounce around from one thing to another and look at my notes. I've got some notes, things I want to discuss, but I may depart from all that. So I only claim to have one real strength, and that is my fisheries work. And so I would ask people here on Cape Cod to pay attention, because we do need leadership, and I'm offering that for the world and the United States of America and Cape Cod, as far as fishery management, leadership, and ecosystem-based fisheries systems, which don't get much coverage. They get a little coverage, but what does get a lot of coverage is the, for instance, NPR, National Public Radio, does a lot with interviewing some fishermen and activists and people from Woods Hole, but they might ask about ecosystem-based fishery systems, but I don't think, the people at NPR who do all these interviews know what it is. And that's what I'm peddling. And all these years I've been an activist on Cape Cod and Nantucket. I've never had an interview with NPR, never in my life. I've asked them, but they never seem to be interested. They're interested in the status quo. They're interested in following what's in the newspaper, oddly enough. And some of their programming is pretty good, but I think we owe it to ourselves to get to the bottom of some of these fisheries problems and get to the root. Here's one I did the other day. It says, "Damn you, listen up. The market quota system means jobs, jobs, jobs." And that's what I claim to be good at, is fisheries. And I dabble in a lot of other things. Today I'm going to talk about the drugs. But I claim to be good at fisheries. This market quota system can have an enormous income. And with any business, an income is pretty important. But as far as systems go, what's the income from the current limited entry system we now use? It's not described by name as a system, but it is a limited entry based fisheries system. That's our current system. It's more or less tied to communist thinking and 5-year plans and old style thinking. It's really a throwback. Our current fisheries system is a throwback to the old days, when all we had was a bunch of frustrated people and fishermen looking to politicians to satisfy their wishes and getting their way with, excommunicating all the other fishermen from life, basically. Hey, you can't be a fisherman. Someone else is the fisherman. That's not equal opportunity. I really don't think NPR has a grasp of what's going on here. And they've done several series of programming, but they don't push on equal opportunity. They don't push on ecosystem-based management. They don't push on, hey, we're wrecking the habitat. Every decade it gets worse and worse and worse, and we don't have any codfish. And it's just not good to not get to the bottom of a story. It's just not good. Now, this market quota system means an income in that your fishing rights are marketed instead of given away to just a few people, which is when I say communism, I mean, you know, what gives you the right to own the resource and have the deed to fish? And the kid in high school, nothing. What gives you that right? Wow. You know, is this the United States of America? The problem is the world followed us down this silly path of, you know, protecting just a few fishermen. I mean, on Cape Cod, you know, town meeting central here in New England, Cape Cod, I mean, we knew better. We did. But, you know, you went along with it. Most people went along with it. I never did. I never went along with that business of ostracizing the fishermen, creating classes of people. So habitat work can pay big dividends. Habitat work is things like making artificial reefs and, you know, working on production of kelp and protection of kelp. Same with eelgrass. Habitat is foundational. And I was just talking to a fisherman. He's a worker type guy down at the coffee place down here at Honeydew, I think it is, down on Swan River. And we were swapping stories. Interesting guy. There's a lot of interesting stories. But, you know, the story is that the draggers have for many years, decade upon decade, they've been sanding the bottom smooth, okay? Or, you know, just, there's not much on the bottom. Of course we're out of codfish. I mean, we don't deserve codfish. So with the fishery system that gives huge cash windfalls straight to a few people in the form of what used to be public resources, to give those public resources away, I did say it's kind of like giving away the national parks, and I do believe that. So if you were a person that would think that giving away the national parks, as some people have, some of the Republican economic hardliners, Milton Friedman, years and years ago, there was a movement to give away or sell the national parks. Oh, private enterprise can do it better. Kind of an imbalanced thing, fringe thing. But what do we expect? Giving away the resource rights to a few people. What do we expect? And then grandfathering in all these methods that basically trash the bottom every day of the week. And there was an area that was just opened after many, many years of being closed down by the lightship. And I don't know all about that, but I suppose the baseline data for, you know, even keeping an area free of getting ravaged for, you know, quite a few years. I think it was 10 or 20 years it hasn't been touched. Okay, it's all over for that piece of bottom. The worst crime was when the hard-bottom dragon came in the late 1970s. I think it was 79, 80, around there. And then what happened was any area that previously was a sanctuary from the dragging, that got hit pretty hard with the hard-bottom dragging. And I've done a little bit of that, not a lot. But I would think you probably, if you were catching a lobster, let's say, probably for every lobster you took on board and caught and were able to keep because it wasn't mangled, there's probably 5 or 6 or 8 probably that you left dead on the bottom because the hard bottom boats have big rock hoppers and big steel rollers. And they can basically go anywhere through rocks and wrecks, and that's where they go, because that's where the fish are. Okay, that makes sense. Go where the fish are. But really, we've gone down the wrong path. This is not ecosystem management whatsoever, what we've been doing for decades. And the market quota system represents smart thinking, ecosystem management. And I don't pander like the NPR does to fishermen. I don't do it. I never have. I mean, I wasn't raised to do that. So these bad systems that we have now siphon a lot of wealth for friends. It's a patronage system. And if you happen to be in the right place at the right time, you have been gifted by the government resource rights in the form of fisheries rights that can be worth millions of dollars. And this is pretty sad that we did this. This is why Cape Cod should apologize for no codfish, because we should have objected here on Cape Cod. We really should have. This has all gone haywire, this whole thing, with giving away public resource rights. So we can turn it around and bring it back. You're not going to do that with the blessing of the people that now hold these deeds to fish. Why would they want to give up what they have? So now we have to, if we want to change the system, we have to buy those people out. It's kind of sickening. It would be like, okay, we shouldn't have sold our national parks. Let's buy them back. I mean, it would be basically along those lines. So let's get cracking on the fisheries work here. Let's say the clock is ticking. I want to see how long this thing takes. I forgot to do that at the start of the show. I wonder how long that's going to be. Anyway. But I consider all that stuff to be corruption, giving away public resource rights. And I just wrote something this morning down in the coffee shop. I doodle a lot. I probably do, as I say, 10 of these a day on average. I don't know. So what's the true nature of government corruption here on Cape Cod? How would we discover that, or how would we even look into that? Well, we'd have a pie chart of problems and the percent of money spent properly, and the percentage of monies, tax money spent improperly. But that's a gray area, because everything is cool and there's a lot of relaxed standards due to, I think, what I would call, lethargy, laziness, ignorance. But even more so, because we have been a rich country for a long time, and you know what happens to rich people, a generation or two later, they lose their way. Well, not always, sometimes. But we've made a great game of beating up the sticklers in government, too. I know that. And the party hacks and the ballyhoo boys that I talk about, the parties have their friends, and if you're just a stickler for doing it right, as you were raised, like at town meetings, New England town meetings, you're out of luck if you are such a person. If you there aren't very few sticklers now that get anywhere, because I do believe we have real strong establishment media. Here's something from Clubhouse. Every cop is an honorary staff and paid part-time. Every EMT also. I'm big into this Clubhouse thing. I went to a statewide meeting yesterday, and clubhouses throughout Massachusetts will be awarding employer awards, not employee, like, we're clubhouse members and we get awards once in a while for being good workers. But these will be at the State House. The Massachusetts Clubhouse Coalition will give out awards, as we do every year, to the employers. And so that's important work there. fringe element rudeness. Okay. I'd like to discuss the class systems in America, and I count them as four classes. This is divisive, so you can say I'm driving wedges, I'm a wedgie boy. Okay, but as I see it, for the purposes of economics and politics, we can class ourselves here in the United States of America into four classes. Beyond that, you know, we have 20 million people here visiting from other countries, visiting legally and illegally. So it's just four classes, and so I've got rich as one class, poor and disabled is another class, and then government workers as a third class, and then I've got middle class, just four, so there's just four. And I've been wrestling with this, trying to figure out how and why this country is sort of meandering around, floundering, and not getting problems solved. And there's something called triangulation going on now, where, let's say, certain classes are getting what they want, and more or less the middle America, the working, regular people, let's say middle class, are kind of turned into spectators. And I think this is accentuated by the money in politics that I talked about earlier. When the money in politics comes in, then you really have triangulation and more of an orchestration of, you know, who's going to get what. And that really turns everything into very dysfunctional democracy. So we have basic democracy, and the other thing is we don't use our vote. So a people that doesn't use their vote, you know, we weaken ourselves. And then we've got China in ascendance, and we all must wonder, why are they growing at 10% a year, and we're having so many troubles? And you know, if you look at a documentary of the Korean War, communism can be quite a problem, or World War II. Communism is has been a major problem for the free peoples of the world. Well, you could say, well, capitalism has too. Okay, all right. So probably one reason why America is getting kind of weak, I think, is the drugs. And when I say the drugs, that means, you know, the illegal drugs. And it could be your, abusing prescriptions, and any improper use of the drugs. So I'm going to get into this drug issue. I never really wanted to, but it's incumbent upon me personally to get into it because, as I mentioned earlier, you know, I do have a history of smoking the grass, running a stop sign, vehicular homicide. That's reprehensible, terrible history I have. So to get into the drugs for me is a way to pay my dues. I live in Hyannis, and I call it the land of bugs and drugs. Now, Barnstable as a town has several villages. We've got Hyannis as one village, but that's where the drugs are. You don't find the drugs as much in the other villages, such as, you know, Marston's Mills and Cotuit and Osterville and Centerville and West Barnstable and Barnstable over there. So, you know, I would say that, and I've said this for years, a lot of people probably are thinking it too, but there just seems to be a business that's being run with the drugs, and we're all watching it. I don't know how the retired police would weigh in on some of these issues, but I would like to speak to some retired police officers from the Cape. My grandfather was a police officer. Two of my uncles were police officers. My grandfather was Providence, Rhode Island, and my uncle, Providence, Rhode Island, and then another uncle was Los Angeles PD. So I've got police in my family. A lot of us do, and of course, that's a good thing. So big pharma context, we're getting taken to the cleaners by the big pharmaceuticals, I think. Well, let me rephrase that. If we're getting taken to the cleaners, who's running the country? You know, what was I just saying about, you know, corruption? And the corruption is on our own part. Really. What is the true nature of government corruption? Well, most of that is on us because we have every right and responsibility to take up these issues ourselves as people and work on them. We don't have to defer, but so many people just defer. They don't work on the issues. And a lot of people just don't vote. They just don't, a lot of people don't take an interest. I started seeing that when I was getting involved in town meeting politics on Nantucket, that my own generation was like, look around and, you know, where are they? And just a little story, when I first started running for the SHAB board on Nantucket, the first time I ran, I was holding the door open for people that were voting, crawling to the polls at 99 years old, you know. And I had this cute little thing I would say, like, open the door, thank you for voting, you know. And these old Nantucketers would just give me a glare like that. And of course, I was too stupid to really realize, what the heck? Wow, you know, why don't they say like, oh, thank you? You know, it's like, thank you for washing, thanks for taking a shower. It's like you're saying that to a person, basically. So, it took me years to figure that out. But that was the wrong thing to say. Because it was an insult. You know, you wouldn't thank a mother and a father for giving their child a bath. You wouldn't thank a mom and dad for taking care of their kids. But I think today people want to be thanked for the slightest thing they do. You know, helping out their democracy. It's like it's someone else's job, not my job. Well, whose job is it? So, I mean, the drugs in the context of big pharma were getting taken to the cleaners. The drugs in a context of the financial coup of 2008, government by Goldman, some people call it. And the drugs in the context of our servants working for other people. You know, is it fair to say the police are working for us, or are the police working for other people? You know, in a context of everything else that's going haywire in this country. I think that there's a business being run, more of a centrally controlled business than what anyone would ever have you believed. I do think it's a conspiracy to milk the American people with the drugs and the illegal drugs, especially because, well, I kind of live in a gas station on Nantucket, to use the word euphemistically. I live extremely close by to a wholesale drug operation, a wholesale illegal drug operation in Hyannis. And I have to move out of Hyannis because it's just getting too much for me, and I don't deserve to live my life this way, even as bad as I am. And that's for the first time in my life. I've said that to myself. No, you're a bad guy, but you don't deserve this. So I live very close to, I live down on Yarmouth Road in Hyannis, which is kind of the land of bugs and drugs. A lot of noise, drinking, drugs. I guess I don't think it's okay for it to be okay that it's all going on. And if, I did mention it, and it just mentioned it to a police officer, just, I know, like they know. Okay. So I wonder what the retired police would say about this business of having special drug police officers calling the shots. And probably your chief may know what's going on, but maybe, the rest of the patrolmen, this is the way I interpret it, are told that, it's not your job, it's somebody else's job if it's the drugs. And that's why I think, okay, it's some kind of business is being run here, because I live in the thick of it. And it's changing my personality, not for the better. I went to church the other day. I don't know what the answer is. But, we got to get into this. And we got to get to the bottom of the drugs in this country. So why not right here on the Cape, okay? So I do have some experience as a Sunday school teacher teaching about the cigarettes and marijuana, and I'll get into that. That was a fun project I had as a Sunday school teacher on Nantucket for, Catholic Sunday school. So we've got to look at this from, religion and moral sense, and from legal, and then, but also from the business model of, hey, we're getting ripped off here. And that's what I want to concentrate on. I want to look at this business model of we here in the United States of America are being ripped off, and this is a drug scam, and we're all being we're the butt of a big joke here. Hey, what else is new? It's like the 2008 financial meltdown. So I'm going to talk more about the drugs. I don't really want to do this job. All right, thanks for watching the Scannell Agenda. Thank you, Cape Codders.